Alright, so today we're going to talk about the mole. We're going to review the mole concept because we're going to apply that for chapter 12. You might remember that a mole is telling you a measurement. It's no different, well, it's at least similar to the concept of a dozen. If I have a dozen things, I can tell you how much space they take up. I can tell you what they weigh, their mass in grams. And I can tell you how many there are, obviously. Okay, now, how many there are won't change. It's always the same. Their mass is going to change depending on what they're made out of. And their volume, well, for a dozen it can. For a mole, not so much. But we'll talk about that coming up. All right, first of all, let's talk about the mass. Now, if I have 12 things, go back to that dozen. If I have a dozen things, how much they weigh is going to change depending on what they are. If I have a dozen people, they're going to have a different mass, or weight in grams, than a dozen cars will. Okay, obviously a dozen cars will weigh more than a dozen people, usually. Okay, so atoms are the same thing. Different atoms have different masses, because different atoms are different sizes. So to find the molar mass, you don't have to memorize it. You just have to look at the periodic table. Okay, so on the periodic table, remember, our molar mass is this number right here. So boron, if I have 1 mole of boron, its mass would be 10.8 grams. And a lot of times, your periodic table will even have a key. The one that you're going to have on your test calls this the average atomic mass. So mass is weight. Okay, if I go to chromium, 1 mole of chromium will have a mass of 52 grams. These numbers are always for 1 mole. Obviously, the periodic table can't tell you differing amounts of moles, so it's always 1 mole, and that's the mass. Alright, so anytime I have a slide that says students, that means I want you to pause the video and work this out. If you're in a group, just wait for everyone to finish in your group, and when everyone's finished, you can start the video up again. So right now, go ahead and find the molar mass of the following things. Alright, so hopefully you paused it and found the molar mass of those things and wrote it down on your piece of paper. So if we just look at the periodic table and find the molar mass of these things, I look up hydrogen, and hydrogen is going to have a mass, a molar mass, of 1.0. If you didn't, round to tenths in the future. Okay, lithium is right under hydrogen. 6.94 is the given value, and if we round that to tenths, it's 6.9 grams. And sodium, 22.99, we round it to tenths, 23 grams. Okay, that's the molar mass. So if I have an equal number of these atoms, they're all going to weigh different. My largest one, sodium, is going to weigh the most, because it's the largest. Well, what about the molar mass of compounds? Well, compound is just multiple atoms together. So let's say we have, well, let's do something with a lot of atoms, H2SO4. Let's say I have a mole of H2SO4. That means I have a whole bunch of H2SO4s. Well, I'm just going to add up the pieces. I have 2 hydrogens, I have 1 sulfur, and I have 4 oxygens. Okay, so hydrogen, if I have 1 hydrogen, its molar mass, I look it up on the periodic table. Right under hydrogen, it's 1 gram. So I have 2 hydrogens. That's what my H2 is. So I have 2 hydrogens. Each one is 1 gram. So my total for hydrogen is 2 grams. Okay, S, sulfur, I have 1 of those. I look that up on the periodic table, and I'm going to round it to tenths. So 32.1 grams. And I multiply that across. And then lastly, my oxygen, well, I have 4 of those. I go to my periodic table to find the molar mass of oxygen. And it tells me it's 16. Okay, I'm going to multiply that across. Now I just need to add all of these guys together. $98.1 grams. All right, now it's your turn. I want you to find the molar mass of these two compounds. Again, go ahead and pause the video, let everyone finish, and when they're finished, I'll move on. Alright, so let's work this out. I have magnesium sulfate. So magnesium, there's 1 magnesium, and sulfur, I have 1 sulfur, and oxygen, I have 4 oxygens. Now I'm going to find the molar mass of each one. So I go to magnesium on the periodic table, and it tells me it's 24.3. I go to sulfur on the periodic table, and I'm going to round it to tenths. And I go to oxygen on the periodic table. Okay, and if I multiply these across, 1 magnesium, 1 sulfur, and 4 oxygens. 4 times 16 is 64. And I'm just going to add vertically. So 1 mole of magnesium sulfate will have a molar mass of 120.4 grams. Okay, hydrogen chloride. Well, all I have to do is add my hydrogen. That's 1 gram. Add my chlorine. I'm going to round that to 35.5. And that's my molar mass of HCl. Alright, how many things are in a mole? Well, remember, there's Avogadro's number of things in a mole. Just like there's always 12 things in a dozen, there's always Avogadro's number of things in a mole. Okay, now 12 is a small number to work with in chemistry when we're dealing with atoms, so Avogadro's number is very big. And we can write this as a ratio, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. Okay, that number always is a constant. There's always that many things in 1 mole. That's a very large number, so if you're using that number for things like grams, that's not going to work. You can't have that many grams. You can't have that many liters, but you can have that many things. That's a lot of things, but atoms are tiny, so that makes sense. Okay, that's all we need to know about things. And volume. Now volume, when we're talking about volume, we're only considering gases. And we don't care about volumes for solids or liquids. We only care about gases. Now, since a gas is mostly empty space, it doesn't matter what the molecules are made out of. If the molecules double in size, most of the gas is still an empty space. So for our volume, it's always 22.4 liters per 1 mole. That's a constant, and that you need to memorize. That never changes. Okay, so let's summarize. Using moles as a ratio. Now we're going to use these to figure out some problems. And when we use the mole ratio, remember, There's some that are constant. What if we're doing volume? Well, we just said volume is 22.4 liters. What if we're doing things? Well, 1 mole is always Avogadro's number of things. These are constants. Have to memorize them. And then our mass is the one that changes. 1 mole, well, it depends what you're talking about. That'll be a determined, yet to be determined amount of grams. Okay, these are our 3 ratios. And we can invert them, we can flip them upside down. So if we had those 3 upside down, that would give us a total of 6 ratios. But those are the only 6 ratios that we're going to use right now. Alright, so now let's use that with the process. Remember the process. Step number 1, write the given. Okay, so how many moles are in 6 times 10 to the 24th atoms? My given is the number of atoms. But I don't want atoms. So remember our second step in the process, whatever unit I start with here goes down here. Now my number never carries down, just the units. Okay, so my first 2 steps everyone should be able to do. Write the given, copy the units down here. Now from atoms we have our ratios. I can only change atoms to one thing, and that's moles. Always go to moles. I'm not going to change atoms to mass or atoms to liters. I'm only going to change atoms to moles. Okay, so now that I've put my units on top and the bottom, I can put in my numbers. Well, we said atoms is always Avogadro's number. And it's always 1 mole. It's always 1 mole, and it's always this many atoms. Okay, this is one of our 3 ratios. Now from there, I can cross off my like units. I can cross off my atoms. I'm left with units of moles. The question says how many moles, so I know I finished it correctly. Now mathematically, I'm just going to divide this 6.0. Let's just call it 6 divided by 6. That's 1. And 24 minus 23, I subtract my exponents. 24 minus 23 is 1. So we'll call it 1 times 10 to the first. Okay, go ahead and work on this problem. Now pause the video and work it out. Alright, so I've written down the given. I don't want the atoms, so I write it down here. Now from atoms, I want to figure out, the question says how many moles, so I'm going to put moles up here. It's always 1 mole, and it's always Avogadro's number of things. And we cross that off, and we work it out mathematically. Okay, I'm going to stop this video, and we'll continue on with the next video. So go ahead and start the second part.